Maybe. All right, good morning. Unity of Kalamazoo. Just want to get a couple bits of information in your ear before we get started. We have the choir singing for us today. It's so exciting. Yeah, and up here, the awesome band crew. We've got John Moody on bass and Dave Van Haren on drums. I'm Brent Decker on piano, and our song leader today is Deb. Woo! All right, I think we're ready to go. You ready, Deb? Okay.
Please stand.
Good morning. I am Beth Odekirk, your platform assistant today. Thank you, music team, and thank you to everyone who is helping us to put this service on today. PowerPoint, streaming, video, audio, our ushers, hospitality, and script upstairs. As a reminder, now would be a good time to make sure your phones are silenced. If there are any visitors here for the first time, we would like to welcome you. This is going to be a very special service today. There's a card in the pew for you to fill out and return to an usher as you leave. Great, you can see it up front here. They will welcome you and give you a small gift bag. Thanks for joining us today. We have a few announcements. So remember that golf is today at 4 p.m. Don't know the location right now. Let me look. Ridgeview, on West Main. So Ridgeview on West Main today, 4 p.m. Friday, styrofoam collection will be from 11 to noon here at the church. Next Sunday, we will have a guest speaker, Al Gemrich, with us, and the title of his talk is Become a Lover of the Most Profound Sort. Al is a retired lawyer by trade and an avid traveler and storyteller. A reminder that we have no service on the holiday weekend of July the 4th. Yes, we have church next week, so come then. And finally, Reverend Greg Coles, this is a big one, he will be back. Please plan for his visit. You do not want to miss the next workshop on visioning. Mark your calendars for Sunday, July the 9th. What date? Oh, Saturday, Saturday. And don't forget to pick up a questionnaire and interview someone that you don't know well so that you can, get the flyers so that you can interview someone ahead of that visioning workshop. So I'm going to try to get that done, maybe even today. Just sit down with someone. I'm sure it's an easy process, but I think it will bring us closer together. So, and that's always a goal of ours here at Unity of Kalamazoo. Okay, now please join in our mission statement. Together, as an all-inclusive community, we awaken to spirit, grow into our soul, and build a better world. And our vision statement, we celebrate a world of ever-awakening consciousness, abundance, peace, and love for all. And our core values, love, authenticity, stewardship, oneness, and playfulness. Okay, I don't know if we have kids in the house. If we do, they are welcome to join us in the center aisle for a blessing. And if they are not with us today, I say we still bless their presence even in the future. So do you remember how we do it? We just rub our hands together because we have a vision for this we're holding. And we say, as you go your way, know that you are loved, special, and important to us. And remember that if you are a grandparent or parent, the third Sunday is our kids' Sunday. So please bring your children. We have good plans for them. Okay. Today, we have a very special guest, Jacob Mabry Pinney-Johnson, who is a fourth-generation Kalamazoo resident and a recipient of the Kalamazoo Promise. He holds a bachelor's degree in social work with a minor in holistic health and is committed to economic and criminal reform, health and wellness, youth development, family support, and social justice, and racial equity and advocacy work. He's a proud father of two, happy Father's Day, and is dedicated to being part of the success and upliftment of his community. We are so lucky to have you here and with us to share your story. Thank you, Jacob, for being here. And now please join Deb Imbrock in singing Blessed Always.
Surround
So today, this for June 26th, is that okay? Back it up. 1 second, please. There we go. That makes more sense. Father's blessing. So our daily word for today is Father's blessing. I bless all fathers with thoughts of gratitude. I am grateful for fathers, grandfathers, stepfathers, and all the father figures who care for children and families. I pray they are called always to follow their guidance and to act to express divine love. I envision their hearts and minds opening to receive blessings of strength, patience, and tenderness. I see them supported in all they are called upon to do and comforted during times of struggle. I pray also for children, young and old, as they remember their fathers. May cherished memories bring smiles and warmth, and may the love remain alive forever in hearts and minds. And for all those on a healing or forgiveness journey, I pray that divine love leads and comforts them on a path toward lasting peace. May the peace and love of God fill their hearts today and every day. And from Numbers, the Lord bless you and keep you. And now, let's get ready to take a few moments just to quiet ourselves. Find a comfortable position in the pew. Feel it supporting your back and legs. Rest your feet flat on the floor and your hands comfortably in your lap. Close your outer eyes if you are comfortable doing so. Just bringing your awareness to being here this moment. The sounds, the sensations in the body, the thoughts arising and passing away. Being aware of the breath in its natural rhythms. Coming to the middle of your chest, start to focus right in the middle of the chest, as if you were breathing in and out of the point in the middle of the chest. Let the breath make the place in the middle of the chest soft and warm and liquid and light. Soft, soft. If you feel hardness or coldness in the chest, soften it, warm it with the breath, just allowing the sweetness of the heart. Soft, sweet, flowing light, a quality of radiance coming from your own heart. Softening, lightening. And now, using your imagination, just imagine that everybody in this room has exactly that same place in the middle of the heart. A place of light. A place that is liquid, that is soft, that is radiant, that is warm. All of us the same in that way. And yet so different in all that surrounds that heart. If you knew that in every human being there was that quality of spirit and truth. And that's what you focused on when you met another person. How different it would be. Now expand to all of the people that you came upon today in your homes, on the sidewalk, in the drive-thru at the coffee shop, other drivers, those you met as you entered this building, wherever you went today, and think of each of those people as another point of light, as a container containing an essence, a quality of softness, of caring, of warmth, of light. Think of the people you interact with today, and think of how often, how frequently, or infrequently you remembered the light that is at the center of the container. It's as if the body is the holder of the light. And often the holder or the container is so opaque that you can't see the light. And people keep saying to you, I am the container. When you remember, you say to them, no, you are the light. In the days ahead, pause and remember that light is the center of your being. Because unless you can see your own light, how can you truly see another's? For it takes a light to know a light. Who will you meet this week? Will you meet partners, or children, or parents, or business people, or people asking for money, or social workers, or politicians, or grocery store cashiers? Is that who you will meet? Or will you meet the light in all its various ways of being contained? Any time of the day, you always can come back to the breath. Breathe the breath as if you are breathing out the middle of the chest. And with each breath, brighten the light that sits in the middle. Soften, warm, brighten. Let the light shine. Now, let's begin to bring our focus back to this room. Open your outer eyes when you are ready and prepare to meet the lights of our choir members as they sing, Lift Every Voice.
All right, well, thank you for that, choir. That was a great song selection. And thank you, Beth, earlier for your song selections and band members. And it's a privilege for me to be here. I hope folks can hear me. My name is Jacob Mabry Pinney-Johnson, like was stated earlier. I'm a fourth-generation Kalamazoo resident, father of two, and I'm committed to racial equity. So it's an honor and a privilege for me to be here on Juneteenth and Father's Day. And so Miss Jo Woods reached out to me and asked if I'd speak. And Jo Woods is someone who is near and dear to my heart. And there's some people in life where they ask you things and you just can't say no. And Jo Woods may be like that with a lot of people. I'm honored to be here, and I will just kind of like say, you know, this is Juneteenth, which is a serious now federal holiday. And so I wanted to speak a little bit just about the history of Juneteenth, which some of us may be aware of, and then also talk about some local history in terms of race, racism, and Black folks working towards freedom, because that's what Juneteenth is about. So it may be a little serious, but the hope of this kind of presentation is for us to get some greater context to this federal holiday, which is celebrating freedom of African Americans in America. So it's important that we kind of localize some of that context as well. And through me being a fourth generation Kalamazoo, Michigan resident, I have some context through family stories. So I'm gonna try to kind of zoom through this. I have a couple slides. I hope you all bear with me. And I hope it's not too much. I also want to give a shout out that there is a Juneteenth celebration going on in Arcadia Park, I believe from 12 to 5 today. So I encourage folks to kind of go there for some of the celebratory vibes. And then this will help kind of give some context to that. But I want to start off with this quote, which is by David McAlvany, and it's from a book, Our Lives Are Not Our Own. The Intentional Legacy. And so I feel like it's just kind of fitting for Father's Day, and it just helps remind me about the future generations. And so the quote is, "Our lives are not our own. Every choice we make will shape the destiny of children yet to be born. Every act of love or hatred, redemption or savagery, thoughtfulness or selfishness births a future for ourselves and others. We live lives permitted by legacy, the legacy giving to us and the legacy we cultivate every waking moment of the day. We are the custodians of a generational story, our lives but our one chapter, positioned somewhere in the index of a book indiscriminable length. The narrative began long before we were born, and it continues further into the future than we might imagine. We may not do with our lives whatever we choose. There is a higher call. We are the trustees, the caretakers of our great-grandchildren's future. Shout out to the grandparents. Our very existence is a gift given by God to be dedicated to his service. That service finds an immediate and practical expression in the context of the life and labor of family. Our greatest aspirations and our highest ideals are reflected in the lives we live with our children. It is not enough that our children succeed. We want them to also build upon the victories and transcend the defeats. It is our children, not our jobs, that are the most important work of our lives. And that's a short quote from The Intentional Legacy, a book by David McAlvany, and I'm probably pronouncing that last name wrong. But so, Father's Day, Juneteenth, a lot to be said. And so I'm gonna kind of turn, I wonder if I can take this off. Can I do that? Maybe not. Let's see, okay. Well, I won't try, but maybe I'll just kind of do this so I can glance a little bit if I need, and I don't want to turn my back to anyone. But again, fourth generation Kalamazoo resident, and so you can kind of just go through the slides. And what I wanted to kind of do is just start with a little bit of history. And to my knowledge, Unity Churches engage in, awesome. So much, that is a lot better, great. So just a quick little bit of context, American history, which folks are probably aware of. Juneteenth is celebrating freedom, right? The fact that African Americans were bought here in slavery. In 1619, the first Africans were brought here. And I want to remind us that the history of Africans and even Africans in America does not start with slavery. And so we have to remember that context when speaking about Juneteenth. And then we also just have to remember some of the other kind of historical moments that shaped our nation in regards to race and racism and this idea of freedom. And so we know about the Naturalization Act in 1790. We know about the Indian Removal Act. We know about the Dred Scott case. We know about slavery being abolished, and also Juneteenth in 1965/63. We know about redlining, which also took place locally here in Kalamazoo, 1934-ish. And we know about Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954. And I am guessing, my mother and father were born in 1945, that there are some folks in this room who were alive and pretty aware of this history. But it's important that we kind of bring it back up when we have days like Juneteenth, where we're celebrating freedom, and we have to remind ourselves of the context of how we got here and why it's so important to celebrate freedom. And then we also have the Voting Rights Act in 1965, and an interesting, 1967, Loving versus Virginia. And so our federal government said, on a federal level, we should probably not make it illegal for interracial marriage to be a thing. And so that's important to me because I'm what some people would identify as a biracial individual. My mother is white, Caucasian, French, Irish, Canadian. My father is African American, and they were born in 1945. And it wasn't until 1967 that our federal government said that, right? So a little context. So we can go to this next slide. And so Juneteenth, folks have probably seen this, right? Juneteenth is when General Granger's first order of business, right, was to go to Texas and tell the folks who didn't know that they were free from slavery that they were free. And that was kind of the marking of Juneteenth, which is true and something that we must celebrate. But we also have to be careful of the narrative of Juneteenth. Sometimes we hear the quote that like history is told by the victors, right? Or like we only get the context of the history by who tells it. And so some people would argue that Africans and even African Americans who were enslaved in Texas did know that they were free, and that there were certain people, slave owners, who didn't want to acknowledge that freedom, right? And that General Granger coming down to Texas was to not just let the black folks who were enslaved know that they were free, but to also let the white slave owners. So we have to be careful of this narrative around, well, black folks just didn't know that they were free, right? And that sometimes that can almost even be insulting when we understand the history of race and racism and the economics behind slavery, right? That folks weren't just willing to say, oh, okay, we'll let this go, because that was a huge economic hit, right? And we can see through the quote of Juneteenth that the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the executive of the United States that all slaves are free, this involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that of employer and hired labor, right? So that's a big thing if you're a slave master, right? That now you have to pay these folks. So this idea that black folks just didn't know that they were free is like, is a little bit more complex than that, is the point I'm trying to make. But also this is a celebration, Mark, right? That Juneteenth is a moment that we must uplift and celebrate the legacy of freedom in America for everyone, and specifically for black folks. So some folks would argue that this could be like African-American July 4th, right? And so even last night, I heard a lot of firecrackers in my neighborhood. And I'm hoping that we'll see some displays tonight, because it really is that for African-Americans, or former enslaved folks in America. So we'll go to the next slide. And excuse me if this is a little heavy. And so bring it back to local. I like to talk about local history, and I can do it all day, so I'm gonna try to do this short and quick. And a lot of it is family stuff, and I used to work for an organization called SHARE, Society for History and Racial Equity, and they're a local organization that does a lot of research around the history of African Americans in Southwest Michigan and how we got here, and then also just promotes racial equity in general, so they're a great resource. There's a book called The Michigan Manual for Freedmen's Progress, and my great-grandmother was a part of the publication of this book. It was published in 1915, so remember Emancipation, Juneteenth, 1965. This book was published in 1915, and it was a book that was basically celebrating the 50 years of emancipation of Africans and Americans, specifically Michigan. And so what they were doing was highlighting how well black folks in Michigan were doing, including Kalamazoo. And so it was sanctioned by the governor of that time in 1915, and we can go to the next slide. And it's important to me because my grandmother is a little child in this picture, and my great-grandmother, Lulu Margaret Williams, and my great-grandfather, Charles Henry Williams, in their house on Pioneer Street here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, was commissioned to put together this book, again, highlighting how much progress had been made in 50 years post-emancipation. And so that's important because there were a lot of great things going on for African Americans, even here in Michigan. And so we'll go to the next slide real quick because I don't want to talk too much. But at the same time, there's a lot of local history that is kind of dark, right? That we need to kind of repent for. Even right here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, when we talk about this idea of freedom. And so these are two articles taken from the Kalamazoo Valley Museum edition on race. And it talks about the local Trail of Tears. So in the other slide, we talked about the Indian Removal Act, right? And right here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, in 1840, some 750 Anishinaabe, local native tribes, also known as the Potawatomi, began walking south on Burdick Street on the first leg of their journey to their new homes in the Mississippi River. And so that's important context when we talk about freedom in America, in Kalamazoo, and even for African Americans in America, right? That we understand that even to make slavery happen, which Juneteenth we're celebrating the abolishment of, we had to take some land from Native folks, right? And so we just have to lift that up and honor the ancestors who also fought for freedom in terms of indigenous folks, but also acknowledge the horror that took place when we think of 750 grandmothers, grandfathers, women, and children who had to walk from Burdick Street to the Mississippi River. And also to acknowledge that even in Kalamazoo, we had KKK presence, right? That in 1925, the Kalamazoo Valley Museum quotes that of the 7 commissioners elected, 4 were believed to be KKK members or sympathizers, including the newly elected mayor of Kalamazoo, Michigan, George K. Taylor. And so again, this idea of freedom and celebrating is very important, but we also have to understand that racism didn't stop when slavery stopped, right? And here's a local context of that. And so again, sorry if it's a little heavy, but I want us to really honor this day and why we must celebrate the concept of freedom, even right here locally. So we'll go to the next slide. And excuse me if I'm talking too long, because I don't even know how much time I have. Okay, thank you. And so we'll fast forward to 1961. These are 2 men who I really love greatly. This is my grandfather, Mabry Johnson, and my father, David Johnson. My father was a local civil rights activist here in Kalamazoo, Michigan. He was a Kalamazoo Central graduate in 1961, and he was also the youth chapter president of the local NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. My father has passed on, so I also want to give a shout out to everyone in the room whose fathers have passed on Father's Day. My heart is with y'all, yeah. And again, thank you for the grandparents. And so in 1961, when my father was a senior here in Kalamazoo, are people aware of the Van Avery's Drugstore protest? Has anyone heard of that? Great, just a quick history lesson. So Kalamazoo, Michigan, 1961, my father was a senior and the youth chapter president. The Van Avery's was a local drugstore in 1961. It stands where the Ecumenical Senior Center stands on North and Burdick Street here in Kalamazoo, right by Lincoln Elementary. And owned by the Van Avery's, and the basic gist was was on the north side of Kalamazoo, and the north side was becoming predominantly African American. And so most of the clientele were African Americans from the neighborhood. The push for the NAACP in the summer of 1961 was to, you think about what was going on, and folks were alive, so I'm not telling you anything new. But what was going on in America, and thinking about Martin Luther King, the civil rights movements, and so that caught on here in Kalamazoo, and my father was a big part of that. And so a local historical moment is the Van Avery's Drugstore boycott. And the basic gist is they went in to ask for applications, my father and some friends, and were denied. And through that, they staged a summer-long boycott, basically saying, if they refuse to hire us, let's not spend our money there. The other context of that was it was often practiced at Van Avery's Drugstore, and this is stories I hear through my father, that, it was kind of like what folks would call not necessarily super overt racism, but a little bit, right? Like black folks would be standing in line going to get their prescription, and a white person would come in and get waved to the front of the line. And this was just common practice at Van Avery's. And so they boycotted the store, and through that, the story is that young people of color and black folks found getting jobs a little bit easier in Kalamazoo. Van Avery's eventually shut down, but it's a historical moment in Kalamazoo in terms of the civil rights. But it's also important to note that that was in 1961 that black folks in Kalamazoo were having to fight for equal employment, right? Juneteenth, 1965. Okay, so the context that race and racism didn't stop when Juneteenth and slavery ended, right? And I'm not telling anything new, but I'm just giving the context for us to celebrate this great day and why it's so important, even on a local level. So next slide real quick, and sorry if I'm taking too long, but this is very important. So another picture of my father, and this is from the local Gazette article, and he has passed on. Civil rights pioneer David Johnson dies at 59. And what's important about my father's life, and he is just one individual and a lot of folks share his experience, is my father was drafted to Vietnam 2 years after the Van Avery's Drugstore protest. So when we think about freedom for black folks in America, and I look at my father's life, in 1961 when he was a senior, he couldn't get a job here in Kalamazoo, Michigan, but 2 years later he could be drafted, strapped with the M16 and a grenade, and I have pictures, right, and fight for this country, right? And so when we look at all of the wars in America that enslaved, folks who had enslaved ancestors fought in, right? So this idea of freedom in America and fighting for freedom is something that African Americans have always been engaged in. The unfortunate part is we haven't been able to receive those freedoms here at home, right? And we still need to deal with that. So, thank y'all for listening. We can go to the next slide real quick. And this idea is, what I'm really trying to hit home is as we celebrate today, Juneteenth, we have to understand that there's still so much more work to do when we talk about our children and future generations in the current state. While we have made so much progress and so much great strides, we still have a long way to go, and we still have a dark legacy that we really need to heal from and repent from and address in some concrete ways. And so the quote is, Ella Baker, "We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it's done." And we need to question, where do we even go from here? Again, when we talk about what does healing look like? What does redemption look like? Yes, we have a federal holiday, Juneteenth. What does unity look like in our country? I love the mission and vision statement, and I love that folks, you're so intentional about going over that. But I would argue, and especially for allies of African Americans and folks who were descendants of slaves here in America, that we really need to ask ourselves the question, what is healing, what is redemption, and what does repair look like for the harm that's been done to African Americans? And we need each other, right? We need to be in unity with that question, and we need allies who can ask those questions to people in power. Because currently, even here in Kalamazoo and in our nation, we have extreme racial disparities that still plague our nation and our children when we talk about the economic wealth gap and the fact that here in America in 2021, the average white family holds $1, and the average African American family holds a mere 10 cents when we talk about yearly income. And that's according to Duke University economist William Darity, who wrote a book on reparations. And so I just want to kind of leave us with this question again of how do we continue to heal, repair, and repent for the harm that's been done as we celebrate the gains of Juneteenth. So I hope that wasn't too heavy for you all. And I thank you for giving me the privilege of sharing. And I want you all to take this kind of short presentation and then honor today, Juneteenth, right? This now federal holiday. And then let's also think about where do we go from here in terms of Unity Church, and in terms of us as individuals. But thank you again. Happy Father's Day. And thank you again to the grandparents. That is kind of what I had to share. I'll stick around for a few, and I thank you again, Karen, Beth, and folks who kind of organized this. Thank you, Miss Jill Woods. And I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to all of your generations that have been here leading the way and making changes in Kalamazoo. And we appreciate hearing your story. And would love to have you come back sometime. I'm Karen Weller, a member of the board, and would you please join me in our board affirmation? I imagine good unfolding in every area of my life. And as the ushers come forward, I was wondering, the choir's going to come up. I have a special request once you get up here, so. Yes, you have to get up here to hear the special request. I need your voices. I just wanted to mention we have a special guest with us today, Mr. Glenn Walker. And we continue to bless you and send you prayers. And I was wondering if the congregation and the choir would sing the blessing for Glenn. We love you. We bless you. We truly, truly appreciate you. We behold the Christ as you. We love you. We bless you. We truly, truly appreciate you. We behold the Christ as Thank you for indulging. And we do bless you, Glenn. Thank you for being here, and thank you for bringing Glenn. We appreciate that. So, our offertory blessing. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive.
Make a joyful noise to God, all the earth.
Give him one more round of applause. Good energy for today. One more time, thank you so much, Jacob, for adding your light and the depth to this day that it deserves. As the ushers come forward, let us pray. Sweet, sweet Spirit, we receive these offerings in loving gratitude. We thank you for all our blessings and ask for blessings upon those who gave so generously today and those who give in many other ways. May these offerings go forth and circulate throughout our world, bringing prosperity to all. Amen. Okay, ordinarily we would welcome our children back. This will be the thing we do the next month. So we are ready for our prayer for protection. Everybody together as we bring our service to a close. Join me in our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us as the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Amen. And now you may hold hands with your neighbor or place your hand on your heart, and let's sing together the peace song.